Hello everyone and welcome back guys to a brand new video where today Jamie and I are back once more with the Unnamed Motorsport podcast, episode 21 of the series today, and we're back with a bit of a different one. Now, obviously no Grand Prix last weekend, we've got through the triple header of the Dutch, Belgium, and well, it was really only a double header in the end, wasn't it, when you think about it, but of course, yeah, the Dutch and the Italian Grand Prix. But today, we're going to be talking about something, a little bit different. Recently, the new Schumacher documentary did release on Netflix. So Jamie and I have sat down, both watched it individually, and today we're sort of going to talk through our thoughts and feelings of it. Whether, if you haven't got Netflix, whether it's worth picking up like a 1 month free trial, or whether it's worth having a look at down the line as well there. Now, Jamie, before we jump into that, how on earth are you doing this week, mate?
I'm alright, yeah. I'm feeling a bit tired, and one of my uni mates is currently living on my floor because he's not got a house, so that's fun. But yeah, that's just student life for you. But yeah, I'm great. The documentary was good.
Good.
Yeah.
Yes, well, this is what I was going to start with then. First of all, 1 to 10, what would you rate the Schumacher movie?
I'd go 7, I think.
Fair enough. I was going to also go 7, so that's reassuring.
Some things I wish they had done a bit better, but overall it was a good experience.
Yes,
so.
yeah. Yes, so let's dive into this then, obviously talking about the entire movie. For those of you that don't know, obviously, what the sort of Schumacher... Well, yeah, I was about to say, for those of you who don't know who Schumacher is, but let's be fair, if there's someone watching this podcast, how on earth would you have made it this far without knowing who Michael Schumacher was? But of course, this was meant to be a documentary sort of focusing on Michael Schumacher's life, sort of not only within Formula 1, but sort of around Formula 1, about his family, everything like this as well. And it certainly gave an interesting insight, didn't it, to his career up until 2000.
Yeah, and then it happened all in like 20 minutes at the end.
Yeah, it was very, very oddly paced. I think it can be safe to be described. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. Like, the time up to 2000 when he won his first title with Ferrari was almost like too stretched out. I thought maybe it was about right if you're going to do it the whole way through. And then the actual key part of his career, in my opinion, where like he was dominating Formula 1 year on year, they rushed through it so quick, and then it's like, oh, he's retired. Okay.
It was very. I think what they really need, to be honest, is a Schumacher 2, wasn't it? Even if they just sort of announced it as being 2 parts.
The mixed documentary in like 20 years.
Well, there's probably going to be that down the line as well there. But yeah, I can't help but feel like it needed another one with it. Like, just that, the way
maybe
it's
like
sort
one
of,
up to 2000
you
and
get
one
to 2000
from there on.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously talking about everything that obviously happened after 2000 and everything like that. Because, like you quite rightly said, all the record breaking, the absolute domination of 02 and 04, nothing at all mentioned.
Yeah.
Literally nothing, I don't think. There were a couple of clips, but that was about it.
Then, like, literally 5 minutes after winning the 02 title, it showed, like, on boards of him in 2006. Like, where did that time go? Like, the key part of his career, I don't know. I felt a little bit shortchanged. But then, like, to be fair, from, like, a dramatic point of view, you can't big up him just winning titles 6 races early. So.
But it's a documentary. It's not designed. I don't think this is the problem, isn't it? I think it was almost like they'd sort of seen the success of Drive to Survive and just thought, well, if we do that with everything in Formula 1, it's going to be great. But then again, Drive to Survive isn't exactly designed for us either, is it? To a certain degree.
No.
But
no, not at all.
yeah, I mean, let's start to talk from the start of the movie. Of course, I never realised early on just how little money the Schumachers had. I mean, let's be fair. 1970s and 80s Germany was not the most prosperous place in the world. The West aren't better than the East.
No.
I think we can all argue that. But I didn't realise, obviously, first of all, sort of like how much involvement his parents had directly on his Formula 1, obviously his karting career early on.
Yeah, and stuff like racing under the Luxembourg flag because you didn't have to pay to enter and stuff like that. It's like, it probably wasn't a big fee to enter, but like just those cost-cutting measures and like using used tyres from other people that discarded them, stuff like that. Like, you never hear stories like that anymore because to get into F1 you've got to be so rich. So I found that really cool.
I mean,
and also how he was racing Hakkinen in 1983, was it?
Yes, yeah. And well, it wasn't quite that early. I don't think it was 80. Yeah, no, it might have been about 83 actually.
Yeah, I think it's 80. Yeah.
And to be honest, I sort of drew a lot of parallels there between Schumacher and Hamilton, to be honest, personally.
Yeah, because Hamilton's dad had to work like 3 jobs, didn't he, and stuff, like work through the nights and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. There it seemed to be,
natural talent,
for me anyway. Yeah, exactly. And obviously, that's sort of, unlike a lot of drivers that sort of obviously get paid through their career and everything like that they make it to Formula 1, for drivers like Hamilton and Schumacher, it was that absolute desire to be the best, because if you weren't going to get any offers. Obviously, I can't remember, obviously one of the sponsors, wasn't it, was saying how they brought Schumacher in for, I think it was it DTM or something along those lines? They wanted him to race in one of the German championships, and they said, we'll give him a 5-year contract. Obviously, 2 years in, he'd made it to Formula 1. Obviously, they were saying like they pay him, what was it, 2,000 francs a month as well? And obviously, just the Schumachers just never thought that would be possible for him.
Which is like nothing.
Marks, not francs. That's awful.
It's not very much. Yeah, francs is the French one.
No, the fact I got them muddled up, which is worrying, because then I used to be a 4x.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just obviously, and I mean, like you mentioned, obviously the discussions between sort of him and Mika Hakkinen, obviously back in the early 80s, because I mean, Mika was, in my opinion, the one guy that really pushed Schumacher to the absolute limit.
Yeah, they went toe to toe, and like they were equal to each other pretty much. Yeah,
and I think obviously it was completely fair that they both got a few titles whilst each other were racing, weren't they? It was always just a shame when Mika decided to leave at the end of 2001. But yeah, obviously Mika Hakkinen talking about, sort of follow him. What's that? He's on his way back for sabbatical.
Only on sabbatical, yeah.
He's still only on his sabbatical, yeah, bless him. Mika Hakkinen is just an all-round legend, isn't he, of the sport? But yeah, I mean, obviously we saw that discussion early on about sort of Mika talking like when they did used to kart against each other, that he was saying going through the final chicane, wasn't it? On one of these completely, I must admit, it looked absolutely destroyed go-kart tracks, wasn't it? And just saying Schumacher would take so much confidence in such an odd line, but because he was confident the car could do it, obviously he'd just make it through every time.
Yeah, and like the rate of 0 mistakes even from karting was like so difficult to do, to be that consistent. Pure
consistency. Yeah. Yeah, it was certainly very, very interesting early on, of course. Now, I think for us, obviously, more importantly was that move towards Formula 1, wasn't it? I think, obviously, that is what a lot of people sort of remember from Michael Schumacher. Now, obviously, before that, and I think a lot of people forget this when you talk about his move to Mercedes in 2010. Again, another similarity between Schumacher and Hamilton, wasn't it? Of the fact that both of them were Mercedes-backed. It's how both of them managed to make it to Formula 1.
Which is quite ironic almost. I don't know. Schumacher being Mercedes-backed obviously makes sense because he's German, but like he never got a shot in Formula. It was in DTM Mercedes, so like obviously didn't have a team back then.
Well, it was, and also the Le Mans with Sauber, the Mercedes Sauber C1. He was meant to be driving that C9, sorry, even I should say.
Yeah, but then obviously the shot at F1 came because Bertrand Gachot got locked up for being assaulting someone in a pub. So that's a.
It was a taxi.
Was it a taxi? Yeah, sorry.
Taxi driver, wasn't it?
Like one of the weirder F1 debut stories.
But remember, who paid Mercedes? Who paid Jordan the 150,000 francs marks? I can't remember. It might have been dollars actually, even in the end.
Who was it?
Yeah, do you remember who paid? It was Mercedes.
Oh, was it? That's cool. Because I guess they had a seat available
for that
and
first
just paid
drive
into
in Formula 1. Exactly. They bought Mick Schumacher. Oh God, they bought Michael Schumacher that seat in Formula 1, and I think that was again just their absolute belief that, I mean, they really have brought two drivers that may have arguably two of the greatest drivers ever to Formula 1 that wouldn't have made it otherwise.
Which people like to hate on Mercedes, but give them some respect from now and then.
Exactly. I think a lot of people look at Mercedes dominate the last few years of Formula 1, but really when you scratch below the surface, it's not a surprise at all, is it?
Like, even Brawn before Red Bull were Mercedes, so they won before. Yeah. Like, it's not that rare, really. Especially when, before Brawn, it was just like McLaren.
But I mean,
as well.
I just mean sort of talking about, like the DNA sort of behind Mercedes. They have always, for whatever reason, whether there's something behind the scenes that we may never know about that gives them the edge, but they just seem to know Formula One.
Yeah,
don't
they've
they?
got very
Even when they're not competing as a team, they just know Formula One. It's really, really odd when you sort of look at all the similarities and parallels over the years. But obviously, Schumacher then made it to F1. One of the things that really stuck with me, obviously, when they were talking about his first weekend with Jordan, he was 23.
Yeah, which is like mid-range now for a driver making their debut. Like,
Verstappen's 23 now.
Like, Mick Schumacher's 21, I believe. I think he's the youngest on the grid.
21,
Lando
22.
And Stroll are both 22.
He's not the youngest.
Oh, yeah,
Tsunoda.
Tsunoda's youngest, of course.
Tsunoda's the youngest. Yeah, Lando's only 21 still.
It's like 23 was. I mean, Hamilton debuted at 23, so it's still young at that time. But nowadays we're at such a different level.
But the difference as well, wasn't it? I think was obviously everyone back then, and it sort of made me realise because I had to have a quick look afterwards. Just how old the average age of the grid was back
it was
then
like late
as well.
20s.
Because I mean, obviously, 1991, you still had your Ayrton Senna's, who was one of the younger drivers anyway, but he made it to Formula One at age 24. Obviously, Prost was still Prost did 91, didn't he? You still had Mansell racing.
Damon Hill will have been.
Was
PK,
he still there?
Gone.
Damon Hill in Formula One in 91?
I mean, he won in.
Had he made it to F1
I don't know,
yet?
but he debuted at 30, Damon Hill, which is really weird.
Yeah, which is really old. Yeah, but yeah, just sort of that whole discussion they were saying, like he was clean shaven.
Yeah,
he probably didn't need like just everything about just obviously the way sort of Schumacher came in, and just immediately felt at one with that car, wasn't it? It was like he was meant to be there.
And like immediately was it 7th on the grid in his first race in like
7th on the grid
to
the
low
first
back
race.
end Jordan, where his teammate was nowhere. Like,
I think he was 1.1 quicker than his teammate.
Imagine that on a debut. I mean, even like Charles Leclerc had a very average teammate in his debut race, and still Ericsson out-qualified him. So, like it just wouldn't happen now. Looking back at it, obviously, and again, the movie hypes up everything, don't they? But it was the perfect storm. It was a shame, to be honest, and again, I think this sort of gets forgotten about a bit as well, doesn't it? He actually burnt out the clutch. Was it his fault?
The clutch just didn't fail.
Mechanical.
He burnt it out, I mean, they were very, very difficult to use back in the day. But I think apparently, he did burn out. He burnt out the clutch actually on the formation lap, getting away. So obviously, it was basically just a ticking time bomb.
And he retired like up Eau Rouge, pretty much, wasn't it? So
he made up 2 places off the start, and basically made 3 corners. And then obviously you had all the drama around that wasn't again really mentioned in the movie too much. Was all the drama sort of around whether he was meant to be staying at Jordan or the Benetton contract, wasn't it?
No, it looked like Benetton just offered him a better deal. Benetton were the 4th fastest team at the time, they said. So it'd be a mug to turn it
Benetton were the 4th fastest team. But the thing was, he'd already signed a contract with Jordan.
Well, for the rest of the season.
There was one key thing in that contract that a lot of people forget about. It said a driver, not the driver.
What do you mean?
And that was so in Michael Schumacher's contract with Jordan, it spoke about how they pay for a driver for the rest of the year.
Oh.
It didn't specify the driver. And that's how Schumacher managed to move to Benetton for the rest of the year. Like, who was it that went the other way again? I'm trying to remember.
No clue. I've no idea.
Was it? No, it wasn't Nannini, but it was someone like that, wasn't it? Let me quickly Google it. Cause that's
1994. I mean, anything before like mid 2000s, I'm clueless on. So
yeah, it was Moreno. Sorry, I think.
Still none the wiser, unfortunately.
Roberto Moreno. Do you not remember Roberto Moreno?
Really, no.
Moreno. He was the one that then went to Andrea Moda for 1992.
That gets me on it now. I know who he is.
Yeah. And even then, he only did 2 races.
Fair.
And then it was Zanardi for the last couple. Yeah, because Moreno went the other way, because he had that 1 year in Benetton that was actually a decent car, and then went back to just absolute...
back-endness.
just disasters, yeah. Like, literally pre-qualifying cars for the rest of his career. But obviously then we sort of get in towards like 1993, 1994. Obviously Schumacher won 1993.
No, he didn't.
Obviously he won the Belgian Grand Prix in 92. No, he won 94 and 95, didn't he? Sorry. Yeah, no, because it was Williams 92, 93. It's very complicated when you weren't around for it, wasn't it? But obviously, 1992 obviously was absolute Williams domination most of that year. Obviously, Schumacher won that one race at Belgium. I think Senna won Monaco, and then Williams won every other race that year. Mansell won, because he was up against Patrese, wasn't he? Who was just mediocre at best. So obviously Schumacher, picked up his first win just a year after he made it into Formula 1, which was absolutely insane. Obviously 93 was the return of Alain Prost, obviously. Senna in the MP4-8. No, Prost won the title. Sorry, then we move obviously to 1994. Now, obviously 1994 is mainly remembered for two things, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Benetton traction control and Imola.
Yeah, and I was amazed how much they showed of the Imola crash. Like, I think I've watched Senna documentary before, but a long time ago. I can't remember if that was more or less like if it showed you everything, because the Schumacher documentary, it basically showed the marshals pulling him out the car when he's very severely injured.
There was in the the mainstream version of Senna, it's pretty much not obviously too much of that sort of thing. You don't see any of that. I think apparently in the 4-hour version, which I must admit I haven't seen, apparently it obviously does show you a lot more of it as well.
But it was really interesting to see. Obviously they were title rivals up until that point, and obviously it's a human life, so you're going to be devastated. But the way it affected, or seemed to affect Schumacher when they showed the interview of him afterwards, with literally PTSD, insomnia, and just thinking the worst was going to happen all the time.
But because that was the thing, though, wasn't it? Obviously,
nowadays, built different.
Unlike anyone else, he watched that happen, right in front of him.
And the impact. I mean, it's all a bit of a conspiracy in it, but the impact, did it kill him there and then, or was he actually in a coma? We don't ever know. I don't think. But if he died there and then Schumacher literally watched him die in his eyes in front of him, which.
It didn't kill him. From what Sid Watkins said, obviously it didn't kill him immediately, but I'm pretty certain he died on the way to hospital. Was sort of thing. It depends how you count. Obviously, define death, doesn't it? Really, we're getting very spiritual with this. But I know obviously it's like Sid Watkins said, didn't he? He was there. I remember just obviously being next to him, and Senna just let out a sigh, and Sid was like, "That was the moment I knew he was dead."
Well, yeah, that part of the movie was really, really interesting. I'm amazed.
I'd argue that was the most interesting bit.
Nowadays, they would not carry on
because Formula One then was. Oh no, of course not. No. I mean, you look at obviously. Well, that was the thing, wasn't it? It was all about Italian law as to why they continued that race. Because obviously, if Senna had been declared dead at the track, that's why even Ratzenberger, for example, wasn't. I mean, Ratzenberger was dead before that car had come to a stop.
You can see it on the videos. He's actually dead in the cockpit. For sure.
Yeah. Obviously, they didn't announce at the track again. I mean, obviously, he hit a concrete wall at 190 miles an hour, didn't he? He was immediately. Obviously, I can't remember. It was I can never remember the name of the type of skull fracture he got. But I think it was the same one Dale Earnhardt managed to get in NASCAR. Dale Earnhardt Sr.
idea, unfortunately.
Yeah, but obviously, they didn't announce Ratzenberger died at the track either. So obviously they could keep the weekend going, which obviously nowadays in Formula 1 is a very, very different thing. But I think at that point, obviously, they'd gone so many years without a death, hadn't they? I think it was the early 80s.
Not safe.
The last time someone had died, yeah. I mean, you look at some of the other crashes, like Donnelly, for example, Martin Donnelly, back in the late 80s, where he was literally, the car ripped in two and everything like that, obviously. But how big an effect it had on Schumacher afterwards was, like I said, I think for me, the most interesting part of the movie. Because I think they said he went... Was it Silverstone?
Yeah, when he was doing the track walk.
He said they went to... And he was just obviously going around the track going, I could die there, I could die there, I could die there. It's crazy, isn't it, when you just think... And for me as well, it makes you think, obviously, back to Hubert's crash a couple of years ago. You think how it affects drivers now, because F1 is generally a pretty safe spot. And I know we discussed this last week, didn't we? Obviously after the crash at Monza, but it will never be, it should never not be in anyone's mind in the nicest way possible. There is still that inherent risk there. And that's part of
That's
why
it says Motorsport.
It's an addictive
risk on all the
sport.
tickets. It says on the back of every single F1 ticket. Like, yeah,
exactly.
It's what you sign up for, and the drivers know that. But nowadays, I mean, back then as well, they had no fear.
That's why they're paid millions of pounds. Like, people that say Formula One isn't a sport, that's why they're paid millions of pounds a year.
Serious injury or death. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was definitely for me the best part of the film. I thought 1994, and then
it was the most
even more interesting actually.
The
onboards
definitely.
of the end of the season Adelaide. I've always been of the opinion that Schumacher knew what he was doing and sort of did it deliberately to take Hill out to win the title, which it's still easily arguable that he did that. But seeing the onboards of Hill and Schumacher at the same time, that corner is so shallow, and like obviously it's a mistake for Schumacher going to the wall. Hill's got a chance to go through, but it was still a send, and it was still Hill was partially alongside, but Schumacher doesn't know he's there because he's just panicking, trying to clean the tyres, and just turns into the corner like he normally would, and Hill was on the inside. So I can see why they let him get away with it, because it looks less deliberate than I remember it looking. So yeah, that was quite interesting as well.
We actually discussed this briefly before the podcast, well, didn't we? And we were both sort of in that same mindset of when you watch it from Damon Hill's point of view. Like, obviously, radio technology and everything like that wasn't the same then, but he's just seen Schumacher coming back onto the track. Whether he just didn't believe Schumacher had any damage or anything like that, but had he known, obviously, Schumacher was damaged, no way would he have gone for that move, you think? Or you'd hope he wouldn't, because he would have got him immediately afterwards.
Yeah, and it was a complete dive bomb into a no braking zone corner, really. So I'm happy. I mean, I like Schumacher, so I'm glad he won the title that year, basically. And I feel less bad about him winning the title because it wasn't all on him making a mistake.
Yeah, I think some of the blame can be apportioned to Damon Hill in that moment. It's safe to say as well there, but yeah, obviously, again, they didn't really sort of touch upon sort of the way like Williams came back that year, of course, because obviously the first 3 Grand Prix of the year, obviously Schumacher absolutely dominated, and that was why they obviously sort of always said Senna knew Imola was a must-win for him to get back in the title fight, because that Benetton was so much faster early on that year that obviously Senna was driving that Williams beyond the limit Senna basically masked how bad that early season Williams was because he was getting everything out of it throughout the entirety of the year.
Even though he did get 2 DNFs,
but there was
crashing at Imola, so he wasn't getting the results.
Yeah, he was on nil. He was still on 0 points. Yeah, but so we sort of obviously just jumped straight to Adelaide. Obviously, 1995 was a bit more of a textbook championship winning year, wasn't it? If I remember correctly,
it was a much more straightforward, no real challenge. And then the move to Ferrari, which I think a lot.
It was much more, the move to Ferrari, and obviously just talking about, because there was always the thing, wasn't there, that there were talks about McLaren, obviously Mercedes coming back with McLaren. That would have been the logical place for Schumacher to go, wasn't it?
Yeah.
They always said.
And like, I think it was the conversation you have with Lauda, where it's like, it's one thing to win with any team, but to win with Ferrari in that state they were in, having not won a title since '79, that defines you differently if you're able to do that. So,
and like they said, I can't remember who it was said to him. They went, "You win a championship with a team. Obviously, you're known within Formula One. You win a world title for Ferrari, you won't need a passport. Everyone will know your name." And I think that just goes to show, for Schumacher, what was the next step.
Dream. And to be fair to him, it paid off. So,
because it wasn't obviously like you see because I think this is what almost has created this culture since then for a Ferrari, wasn't it? Where you've got drivers that look up to the way Schumacher was able to dominate with them and want to replicate that. There wasn't anything like that for Schumacher prior to Formula 1, was there?
No, not at all.
Particularly, or not that was touched upon in the movie. It wasn't like he like dreamed of driving for Ferrari from when he was young or anything like that. He, like we said, he was a Mercedes man for many years.
And Ferrari, I think the last title was Jody Scheckter in '79, so Schumacher would have been 10 years old when Scheckter won that. So it's not like he had idolizations of Ferrari dominating like some of us do now. Like, no,
he watched a couple of near misses for them.
I guess he might have seen the end of Lauda at the Ferrari, but that's it really.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you had like Prost 90, 90. Obviously just missing out on the title. Obviously just before he came into Formula 1, 87.
You're on your own.
Well. I want to. Was Mansell, was he McLaren or Ferrari when he
the puncture was
late on in the year?
I think that's Ferrari.
Was that McLaren? Was that Ferrari? I'm pretty certain it was Ferrari. Yeah, no, because Mansell never really drove for McLaren, did he? Apart from when he was too big fat, for the car. Well, he wasn't too fat. It was his shoulders.
Thought it was too big. Like, I always thought it was his waist.
He was too. His shoulders were too broad. You thought he'd been in Carter, just been eating too many McDonald's before he came back. He's an old
British man. Like, what else was he going to be?
He wasn't that old. I mean, he had the mustache of a 70-year-old, but he wasn't that old, was he? But obviously, then you get sort of this big hype up of Schumacher trying to win his first title with Ferrari, wasn't it? It was a lot of the movie. Obviously, 96 was, of course, Damon Hill wrapping up the world title. Schumacher, again, that Ferrari was never really a championship contender throughout a lot of the year, wasn't it? Schumacher could drag results out of it, but obviously that year was not really much of a shot. Like they said, obviously, because him and Berger, didn't they? They both went to Ferrari from Benetton in 95. It was both Ferrari drivers and both Benetton drivers swapped over, wasn't it?
Yeah, so like that Ferrari in 96 wasn't anywhere near a title.
It was a disaster,
Yeah, and then 97 was the big one when he tried taking out Villeneuve and failed. So
which we said about Damon Hill's could have been sort of 50-50.
That's still on my
That one was all on Schumacher. You watch him see Villeneuve down the inside, turn out of it, and then turn back in even more aggressively.
My friend.
Which was obviously crazy. Yep. And
ends up getting...
Do we think it was right for him to get disqualified for the season?
It wouldn't happen now. Like, it was very, very harsh.
Would it not in that circumstance?
I don't believe so. Maldonado drove into Perez
Remember, there's no money.
In practice once.
Yeah, remember, there's no money tied into Drivers' Championship, so it wouldn't actually make any difference.
I suppose they disqualified McLaren, didn't they? But that was for cheating.
The constructors still scored the points, didn't they? Yeah, that was very different.
But I don't know. I don't think they just... If someone did that now, they wouldn't disqualify them from the championship. Maybe a couple of races, like ban them for a few races. But the FIA were very impulsive back then. So...
Well, I mean, was it 1994, wasn't it? Was 4 of the 5 driver bans of all time.
Really?
Yeah, the only other one was Grosjean.
That's very good. But I found it interesting actually the off season between 97 and 98 when they showed the family holiday to Norway and stuff. Like Schumacher actually had big self-doubt. Like, am I good enough for F1? Because he's been at Ferrari 3 years.
Yeah.
Not seen a title yet.
2.
Only 2 years, sorry.
Was it?
Yeah, only 2 years.
Yeah.
But like the self-doubt he had after, like, because he genuinely didn't think he did anything wrong in it. Like, that's not just him.
No, which was mad.
I don't know how he managed that.
But that, because that's what makes a great Formula 1 driver great. You stand by your decisions.
But it's not only stood by it, because sometimes you can be stubborn and know that you're doing it wrong. Schumacher just believed he was right, having watched back evidence.
Perhaps that's still what he believed to this day.
I don't get it at all, but fair play. He's the greatest, or one of the greatest of all time. So, yeah, I probably can't criticise that much. No, and I think that was absolutely insane, wasn't it? Obviously, talking about that, just how he was so adamant he was right. Like Ross Brawn said, didn't he? He showed him the footage. She was like, "Yeah, no, I've done nothing wrong there," and just that absolute mentality that you can't be wrong
on. Is insane. Well, again, because obviously we'll talk about that in a second, won't we? As well, obviously talking about 1998. Obviously, the first battle with Mika Hakkinen. Obviously, like we said, they raced each other in go-karts a fair bit, but obviously the McLaren MP413 was the MP4.
Can't
was it
help.
the 13 in 98? I think it was the MP413 in 2008. In 98 even, was an absolute rocket ship, wasn't it? Yeah, no, it must have been the MP413, because 2008 was the MP423.
Well.
That's where I'm getting me muddled up from. But obviously, that thing was an absolute rocket ship. And obviously, they get to Belgium.
They cut out completely the massive crash, which I found a bit annoying, so I wanted to watch it again.
That was 99,
No, 98 for sure. That was the restart, yeah.
Was that 98 as well? Yeah, it was the second No, because they only showed the second restart?
They only showed the restart where Hakkinen retired on his own.
Which was the second one, wasn't it? Because the first one, Hakkinen led, didn't he? Yeah. Yeah, because I even said beforehand, obviously when they started showing like the shots of
I was saying to people I was watching with,
I was like, oh yeah, this is the big one.
Like, watch this, this will be funny.
And it just never appeared.
It was the wrong start completely, but... I mean, the big crash wasn't that relevant, so I can see why they left it out.
Yeah. But obviously, you get that. Obviously, Hakkinen gets taken out. I think was it Johnny Herbert took him out at the start?
No, I'm going to say something stupid. I was going to say it was Nick Heidfeld, but he wasn't around in '98, was he?
Nick Heidfeld wasn't in Formula 1 in '98.
I mean,
Nick Heidfeld only came in.
It was definitely a Sauber. I know that.
I'm pretty certain it was Herbert, wasn't it?
Who drove the Saubers? Alesi and Herbert. So yeah, you're probably right. Not Nick Heidfeld.
Yeah, it was Herbert. I was going to say, because Herbert won the European Grand Prix.
99.
Was that
for Stewart?
99, yeah, for Sauber. Oh, was it Stewart? Yeah, wasn't it? Of course. But obviously, yeah, so Hakkinen's out of the Grand Prix. Schumacher has got a golden opportunity to take 10 points out of him. What up to that point was probably his best track in Formula 1, wasn't it? Obviously, first race, first win. A lot of happy memories there. Then he goes into the back of DC. Now, where do we sit on this one, Jamie?
I think it's quite similar actually to the Verstappen Ocon crash from Brazil. So I would apportion.
Is it?
I mean,
you remember the Ocon Verstappen crash wrong?
No. I think it was more so Coulthard's fault, but there is things that Schumacher could have done to avoid it, like not crashing.
Yes. Yes, yeah, but it's very difficult, isn't it, in that situation?
Like, he obviously didn't see it, but Coulthard should have pulled off to the racing line because that's what you did to blue flags. So, I mean,
not generally so much in the wet though, is it?
Like you saw Hamilton, Russell.
That's what they always say, obviously, because he was trying to reduce the spray.
But yeah, it was more Coulthard's fault. Obviously, he's getting lapped, so you kind of are obliged to get out of the way. But Schumacher could have not driven into him.
Exactly, yeah, very, very difficult, isn't it? And I think, obviously, again, then we really sort of Schumacher's tempers flare. Because, like DC was saying, obviously, like, before that, they used to, like, meet up in the off-season and things like that. Obviously, have parties together. Exactly, yeah, which, again, was, like, another sort of weird aspect of Michael Schumacher. Yeah. He had sort of, like, all these different dimensions to him, wasn't it? As well there, but, you know, because, obviously, the crash itself was, obviously, pretty bad. Obviously, we then see the aftermath, him storming, the iconic shots of him storming down the pit lane, where he's obviously absolutely livid. But obviously, DC then said to him a few days later, didn't he? He said he met up with him before the next Grand Prix, and went, "I didn't." Do you ever? You've got to admit, like, some of it was your fault.
He's like, "No, I don't think so."
And you just went, "No." No, and David went, "Well, you got to admit sometimes you make mistakes."
Not that I can remember.
And
that was ridiculous. So
it sums up Schumacher.
It's quite exciting because it's the sort of thing Max would say.
The fact he thinks about it as well. Yeah.
Literally.
But unlike Max, I think Schumacher's got the charisma to handle it.
Yeah.
A bit in the same way, you won't understand the reference, but as in Joey Logano in NASCAR tries to be like the new Dale Earnhardt, but just doesn't have the same sort of mentality.
Yeah, that goes straight over my head, sorry.
It goes straight over your head, yeah. He's just a dick in NASCAR.
Fair. Well,
no,
they're American, so not surprising. But
yes, they are American, Jamie.
Yes,
you're right.
I know NASCAR.
But you know the ovals. Yep. Good. But yeah, so then of course we get to 99. Obviously, Schumacher has his big accident at Silverstone as well there. Then obviously we get to the year 2000. A lot of it is obviously the hype up. There's no real sort of talk about him returning from a broken leg in the same season.
And getting a pole by a second,
which ought to have
after
been mentioned.
His first race back. Like, I thought that was the most incredible thing he ever did, or one of them.
Because 99 was the year he
would have won a title like that. I mean, Eddie Irvine almost won it.
It says everything that Irvine was in the title.
Irvine was so trash.
It says everything.
Like,
how Irvine got the gig there as well. And what's he doing with blonde hair nowadays?
Such a midlife crisis.
He looks... Why has he done the Jacques Villeneuve? Yeah. That's what I don't get. It just doesn't.
The best thing he ever did was throw water at
99 was like...
So that's it all, really.
Yes, yeah. Like, 99 was definitely the one that got away for Schumacher. But the fact he came back, and... would he have won that Grand
he gave it to
Prix?
Irvine for team orders.
Yeah, he gave it to Irvine for team orders, yeah. But then, obviously, we sort of get back into 2000, of course. All the hype up for the Japanese Grand Prix. Which, like we said before the video, was very oddly hyped up in the sense of they made it out, obviously, because we'd watched sort of 98... Last Race Decider,
97 as well.
97, Last Race Decider, 94, Last Race Decider. This was meant to be the year.
It's interesting because until about half an hour ago, I thought Suzuka was the last race, and he had to beat Hakkinen there and then.
Yeah,
and then it turns out there's a race in Malaysia, which was 1 race later, the last race of the season. So he ended up winning the title by 19 points, and it was just to win it in Suzuka. He had to do that. So yeah.
And even if he hadn't beat Hakkinen, he would have walked into Malaysia with a 9, 10 point advantage anyway. So basically, you just needed to finish. Yeah, it was really, really weirdly hyped up, wasn't it?
Not even the only documentary. Like F1 generally hypes up that race hugely, which to say it's a bit like Brazil 2009, where it's the moment it happens, but if it goes in 1 race longer, you're still going to win the title.
Well, I can't remember whether it was 99 or 2000 as well that had arguably one of the best qualifying head-to-heads of all time between Schumacher and Hakkinen.
Frentzen, wasn't it?
No, that was 97.
Jerez,
you're thinking of Jerez,
aren't you? Which one are you about?
Yeah, where they tied. I'm on about. It's, again, I think it's weirdly unknown. Schumacher and Hakkinen, again, I can't remember if it was 99 or 2000. I want to believe it was 2000. They traded fast, because obviously back then qualifying was an hour long.
Yeah.
You could do 12 laps. So obviously you had an out lap, a flying lap, an in lap. So obviously you do that 4 times over the course of the hour. I think Schumacher and Hakkinen traded times, I think between them 7 times over the course of that session.
Nice.
Of going fastest. And they were just pulling away from all the other cars behind.
Huge.
I think, let me get out the qualifying results quickly.
We love some mid-podcast research.
Exactly, it's always the way with these. So yeah, qualifying. So yeah, it was 2000 then. So Hakkinen was 9,000 slower than Schumacher at the end of qualifying. And it was only their teammates within 8/10 of a second.
That's ridiculous.
We then had the 2 Williams 8 and 9/10 back, and then Eddie Irvine, the GOAT himself, in 7th.
What a driver!
what a lad! But and then also, sorry, before we forget, Gaston Mazzacani down in P22, 4.6 seconds off the pace. But yeah, obviously, so we sort of get like the 2000, he wins the world title at last, glory back to Ferrari.
And that was it, really.
And then it was it, wasn't it? We just cut to 2006, him announcing his retirement. 2010, he comes back with Mercedes.
Gets pole in Monaco.
And genuinely, 2013, he has his skiing accident.
That was pretty much it. Like,
the final 10 minutes just felt so rushed.
I really liked the ending, actually, like how they talked to the family about it. Obviously, it's really hard for them to talk about it, but the time from 2000 to 2013 was so rushed.
It was like they suddenly realised we've got to do 13 more years. We've got 5 minutes left of footage.
We've only been licensed for a 2-hour documentary.
And this is, I think, what we said at the start, wasn't it? There desperately needs a Schumacher movie part 2.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things.
Like, what amazes me is just how much he rewrote every record. Like, he equaled, or what was it, the interview in 2000, before he won a title, he equaled Senna for wins in 41. Before he dominated.
He was incredibly emotional.
That's before his 5 years of like, he's in the first of 5 years of domination and he's equaled the record already. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. Bearing in mind,
Prost had like 8 more wins, didn't he?
10,
it was 49.
Prost had 51%, is 41. Was it 49?
I think
or was it
51? I swear.
Is it 49? Let me... Yeah, carry on.
But like stuff like that.
I'd always thought it was 51.
Where that's like, he's basically become statistically 51. One of the best of all time, and he's still got 4 more years of domination to do. Which, to rewrite the records and set the bar that high, is just ridiculous.
Well, again, no one thought it would ever get broken.
And even Fangio's 5
until
titles,
Hamilton
no one
came
ever thought that would get broken. And then with Schumacher's 7, we never thought that would happen, but here we are.
Here we are, 15 years later, and we're still talking about whether it might happen on a podcast. Yeah. But yeah, they just felt like... Because, I mean, for example, like 2002 wrapped up the title of the French Grand Prix.
2004 was at Belgium, wasn't it?
2004 was Belgium, and a lot of people forget, had he not retired at Monaco...
Got a podium every single race.
That would have been something... No, that would have been something ridiculous. I think 13 wins in a row.
Oh, yeah, it would have been, yeah. But Montoya took him out in the tunnel.
Let me quickly find it out.
Because his before and after are both in like the top 10 for most consecutive wins ever, before Monaco and after Monaco. So if he won it, it would have shattered everything.
Yeah. So he got 5 wins before Monaco, and then 7 wins after. So it would have been 13.
And he was winning until Montoya took him out in the tunnel and the safety car.
And only won 1 race in the last 5.
Obviously. But yeah, I think that's my memories, because obviously I was only born in 2000. So my very early memories of Schumacher is that time. So I kind of hope there'll be more stuff about his domination.
Yeah.
But I guess, yeah.
I'll be honest, I only sort of started watching F1 in 07.
So I vividly remember the Alonso Schumacher years, which were completely skipped over, which was a bit of a shame. But
yeah. Exactly. And I think this would have been sort of really important to discuss, wouldn't it? Of sort of that whole elation of 5 titles in a row, sort of Ferrari on top of the world, and then watching it all come crashing down again.
2005 was dreadful. So that would have been very interesting to see something on that.
Well, they only got 1 win, and even that was
fraudulent,
fraudulent, wasn't it, really? But, yeah, I think for people that, again, that watch Drive to Survive, a really good movie to sort of give you a bit more context to someone that is still mentioned a lot in Formula 1 now. But for die-hard Formula 1 fans, I'd still argue the Senna movie was better.
I think that was better as well, yeah. It just went more in depth, and you could understand deeply a lot more stuff going on. Whereas it felt like a good overview, but I didn't come out knowing that much more than I knew already, if you get what I mean.
No, exactly. It was a very, very... Don't get me wrong, I would highly recommend watching it. It was a good watch. But I don't think it's... I'm not sure it's going to be one I'm going to think in 3 months' time, I really want to watch that again. Right.
We've been going on quite a long time, but here we are.
We've spoken a lot about the Schumacher movie today, and to balance it out, we're going to do quite possibly the most controversial thing we've ever done on this podcast, Jamie. We are going to go through our top 5 greatest drivers. Well, we're going to do top 10. We've kind of decided as a house rule, 10th to 6th are going to be pretty flexible.
Yeah.
5th to 1st are going to be rigid. Now, we're not going to talk too much, obviously, about each one.
That'll take ages.
Because, I mean, this podcast has already been going on for 45 minutes.
About one of them, so.
Yeah, exactly. I'm already looking at mine and feeling like I might have to change someone.
Brilliant.
I might have to put an 11th in there.
Go for it. I know who my 11th is.
I'm going to keep it as 10.
Want to put an 11 in.
Who's your 11th? Who's your 11th?
Nigel Mansell.
Big Nigel. I was going to put Hakkinen in there because I said he was on the same level as Schumacher and then haven't featured him in my top 10. Yeah.
So, number 10 for me.
Right.
Fernando Alonso.
Yep. Okay. I can respect that. He's not in mine. I have gone with Hill of the Graham variety.
Nice. Graham Hill. I don't know much about him, so I don't think that's why I put him in.
2-time Formula 1 World Champion. 5-time Monaco Grand Prix winner.
Triple crown.
Only ever Triple Crown recipient.
In terms of great,
that for me puts him in greatest of all time.
Fair enough. He's up there for sure. Number 9, Mika Hakkinen for me.
Fair enough. He did make your top 10, did he? I have got Jim Clark. No, sorry, Nelson Piquet is my number 9.
Yeah, Piquet I felt was unlucky. The thing is, he's got 3 titles, and you never really hear anyone say anything about him. So
3 world titles in an era of absolute dominance. For Nelson Piquet, it was a bit unlucky. The fact that he was sort of Brazil's hope for a long time, and then Senna sort of came in. Piquet was an absolute machine.
And that round outside,
and it was still always that Hungaroring, the full opposite lock, rears are completely locked out. That will always stick in not my memory, of course, but seeing that footage. Afterwards.
So he's unlucky to not be in mine.
Yep. So Mika Hakkinen, then obviously 2-time Formula 1 World Champion, the only man that truly took it to Michael Schumacher.
And the only one that Schumacher properly respected, I would think. They're good friends. I mean, they were before the accident, of course.
Yes, outside of the car. Yeah, definitely.
8th place.
Definitely. Number 8, then?
Jackie Stewart.
Right.
Have you forgotten about him as well?
I had him just outside my top 10, but I can't remember why. No, I didn't. Sorry, I've got him at number 7.
Right. Well, close enough.
I just realised I put Jim's Clark name down twice when the second one I was thinking of was Jackie Stewart.
I mean, they're very similar.
Because they're both Scottish.
They wear flat caps equally amount. So.
I can't imagine Jim Clark wears a flat cap on, I'm going to be honest with you. Possibly. Yeah, so I had Jackie Stewart at number 7, sorry. For number 8 for me was Fangio.
That's harsh. That's very harsh.
I'm sorry. I hate to do this.
50% win rate in F1, and most of those non-wins
but
were
there
DNFs.
there is 1950s Formula 1 tax in my eyes.
I don't know.
He was up against a lot of people that were just there because they had a lot of money.
It's true, but he was so ahead of his time. He's like an actual driver.
He was ahead of his time, don't get me wrong. That's why he makes my top 10. But when you consider how much further a lot of Formula 1 drivers went over even the next 20, 30 years, I think Fangio very quickly would have been swallowed up by better talent.
Fair. I think because he was the benchmark in such a difficult time to drive an F1 car, it was like, he's a lot higher for me. I'll leave it. But yeah, Jackie Stewart, I think also the stuff he did outside of sport, like safety, was amazing. So,
safety stuff, yeah. Jackie Stewart again was incredible. Number 6
Number
then,
7,
Jamie.
Skipped. But, I mean, you already know yours.
Wait, Fangio was... Oh yeah, Stewart was my number 7.
My
Sorry,
number
Fangio
7
was number 8, wasn't it? Who did you put at number 7?
Prost. Which,
Fair enough.
I don't rate Prost as highly as Senna. Obviously, he's got 4 titles. Some of them we can question. But I respect him. He's sort of like a better version of Nico Rosberg, in my opinion. So... he wasn't
a lot better.
Yeah, a lot better, obviously, but he was nowhere, or he didn't have the natural ability of Senna. He would just win in really calculated ways. So he's a very respectable driver, and he's in my top 10. But he's overshadowed a bit by the other driver in his era. So yeah, I don't know if you've included him higher, but you hopefully have.
I have
Number 6 then.
Number 6, I have put Niki Lauda.
I put Niki Lauda as well. Isn't that nice?
At number 6, look at that, eh? Fair play.
Yeah, Niki was
play. A legend of the sport.
Absolutely. And the stuff he did was incredible.
And I think more recent years, people have grown to appreciate Niki Lauda more. The fact that he came back, beat Alain Prost in the same machinery, don't forget that. Albeit by half a point.
Half a face as well.
Awards.
Like,
that is
no, it's
awful,
not. I'm commending him. He was an absolute warrior. Like, crazy.
I wouldn't quite word it like that to him, but okay. But yeah, I mean, to come back and win 2 Formula 1 titles after being read your last rights is ridiculous.
Watch Rush if you haven't.
Yes, yeah, watch Rush definitely, as we're talking about movies today. Right, let's get into the big ones then. Number 5, Jamie.
I've gone Jim Clark.
I've also gone Jim Clark. That's
We're on
good.
The same wavelength. I think.
Yep.
He would have. He was so
there.
far ahead of his time. He'd raced in the 60s, absolutely dominated. Was it the Nürburgring when he used to race on the Nordschleife? He was like 2 laps ahead of everyone. It's like ridiculous.
I don't think it was that much.
Oh yeah, 2 laps is like 100 kilometers.
20 minutes.
Like.
No, not that much. It's about 30
kilometers,
40 kilometers. Yeah.
But yeah, he was ridiculous, and obviously career massively cut short.
And the fact he dominated everything that he drove as well.
Did he do superbikes as well?
The fact that he'd do like races every weekend. He'd do touring cars, he'd do Formula 2, he'd do everything. Was just incredible.
Absolutely had more titles had he not had his career cut short, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. And his driving style was incredibly smooth and conservative, which takes a lot of skill. Number 4.
Number 4, you're going to hate me for this. I've got Ayrton Senna.
Right, okay.
But I know you like him a lot.
I'm gonna balance that then with I've got Alain Prost at number 4.
Fair enough.
Again, like you said, overshadowed by Ayrton Senna. Helped a little bit by Bless being the man in charge at the time. Debatably 3 or 4 world titles.
4 world titles.
Question.
Surely 1 or 2 of them were legit.
Remember. No, I mean whether it should have been 3 or 4.
Sorry, you were saying all of his titles are void.
Obviously not yet. 88, sorry. Yeah, 88 was
questionable at best.
Should Senna have been given that? Yeah, exactly. But on the other hand, in more recent years, I've grown to appreciate. A lot of people sort of remember Senna being an absolute weapon in terms of pace. There were a lot of weekends where Prost could match him as well. People sort of remember the iconic like Monaco 88 and everything like that.
But Prost was a match for him.
But Prost was a match for him.
Fair play. I put Senna 4 because obviously he was ridiculously quick. Probably one of the most naturally gifted drivers ever. But I think sometimes the consistency let him down, which is why Prost was able to pick up 4 titles. Like, he would win at all costs.
Bearing in mind, Prost only really won 1 more title against Senna. I think that's what a lot of people forget.
What were the...
Well, Prost won 93, obviously in the OP Williams. There wasn't really much Senna could do against that. 88,
which was the questionable
was
one.
obviously the controversial one. 84 85, was it?
I would say 85, yeah.
Where Senna wasn't really a competitor, and then
5, 6, 9, and 93, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously 85 and 86, Senna didn't really have a car capable of beating him either. So it was only really the one title Prost sort of took away from him.
But I feel like Senna won at all costs, which is what people look up to him for, which is great. But if you look at someone like Hamilton, for instance, he sort of is a bit more calculated, which in the long run helps, because Senna has obviously reliability, but he had a lot more DNFs down to his own accord than someone like Hamilton does.
Yeah, fair enough. Number 3, then.
This is where I put Fangio, because 5 titles in an era when 5 drivers died every weekend is just insane. Like, he was so far ahead of his time, like 20 odd years, and to
also just kept moving to the fastest team.
Yeah, but if you're the best driver, the fastest team's going to employ you. Like, he was insane.
But teams could also field as many cars as they liked.
Yeah, but if to be like so far ahead of your time, I think that's a commendable completely. Like, he was an actual professional driver.
Yeah, I think to be honest, being able to win 5 titles is impressive enough back then, knowing any crash would kill you.
So I respect Fangio hugely.
Kind of insane. Would he have got as many though had Ascari not died?
Ascari won 2, didn't he?
Because Ascari was really his match, wasn't he? Yeah.
I didn't realise that he died, to be honest. He didn't die in F1, did he?
I think he did, didn't he?
Let's have a look.
Because he had the crash at Monaco and then died a week later, didn't he? At Hockenheim.
Oh yeah, he died at Monza in 1955.
Yeah, sorry, died at Monza, didn't he? Yeah. A week after crashing into the Monaco harbour.
Yeah. It wasn't during a race weekend though. He was driving an F1 car around
testing.
in a suit and tie for some reason. I've just read on Wikipedia. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a test.
And 55, Fangio had already won 3 by then, I think, or 4. He won 51.
No, not by 55. He won 51, 54, and 55.
Yeah, so he's on his way to his 3rd by then. So I think, probably.
Yeah, probably. Fair enough.
Yeah, who's your number 3?
Enough. I have gone.
You're going to say Schumacher. I know you are.
I'm going to say Schumacher.
Fair play. I know you rate Senna highly, so it's all opinion at the end of the day. So how are you going to justify it?
Exactly. So my sort of thing for Schumacher is the fact that, again, don't get me wrong, obviously, as we've discussed throughout the entirety of this video, obviously very, very quick. Obviously, he has that absolute all-out desire to win. For me, it's just 97 takes away a bit of it, I'm afraid.
That's fair enough.
And yeah, that for me always is just, should he obviously, again, as we've discussed, sort of 94 now was a bit more sort of 50-50, but that could have very easily been 6 world titles. And again, had Senna not died, obviously if Damon Hill was able to drag it into a title battle, Senna would have probably wrapped up that title as well. But obviously, again, you can say that for every driver. For me, it was just how often Schumacher got himself in controversy as well through things like that. Obviously, Silverstone, which wasn't mentioned in the video, in the movie, sorry, I should say,
finished and got away with it somehow.
yeah. Some of the politics that obviously, again, were a lot more down to Ferrari employed than Schumacher, but just sort of that whole culture they did sort of bring up as well. For me, takes a little bit away from it, and then obviously, like for example, 03 was again a bit lucky.
Yeah, it was completely
at times as well. Number 2 then, Jamie.
You're good. I want to asterisk my top 2 already. Because I'm going to say Schumacher at the minute.
Right, okay.
But obviously, my number 1's fairly obvious. It's Max Verstappen. No, it's not. It's Lewis Hamilton.
I'm really surprised you put Hamilton at number 1.
The thing with Hamilton, I don't like to judge drivers until their career's over. As it stands...
Generally, that's why I've got Hamilton still at number 2.
Okay, fair enough. But as it stands, if Hamilton wins title number 8 and then dispenses George Russell handedly next year, fair play, he's the best. If it's entirely possible in my mind, Verstappen wins this title, Russell comes in and rattles Hamilton a bit. Like, I don't think it will happen, but it could. If that does happen, then Schumacher will go back above for me. But
fair enough. And I think this is the thing, isn't it? Now, Hamilton is now quite possibly in the 18 months that will define him as either the greatest driver of all time or just in the conversation for it. I think if Hamilton, like you said, if Hamilton wins world title number 8, whether that be this year or next, and beats Russell in the process, there will be very little argument that he isn't the greatest of all time. I think for any rational Formula 1 fan, isn't it? Again, I think for Hamilton as well, he almost like combines the best bits of Schumacher, Senna and Prost, doesn't he? That calculated approach that Prost always had, the absolute desire to win of starting from the bottom that Schumacher had, and
just natural ability.
Those qualifying laps.
Those
natural ability and those qualifying laps and that wet weather ability that both Schumacher and Senna shared. Hamilton has been able to sort of captivate the best of these drivers that he's seen in the past and bring them all together, and does a huge amount outside of Formula 1 as well that I know a lot of people are hating for, but there is no way you can argue Hamilton doesn't try and make the world a better place.
And he's literally bigger than the sport. He's like...
He is bigger than the sport.
He's such a massive figure.
You can give us all this stuff about Ferrari are bigger than Formula 1, or Formula 1 is Ferrari. I'd argue at this point Hamilton is
much bigger.
Close to Ferrari levels of bigger.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Like when Hamilton leaves,
people don't know anything about Formula 1, but they know
certainly
Hamilton.
In the UK, once Hamilton leaves, F1 in the UK will diminish a little bit. Unless Russell takes the mantle straight away.
I wouldn't say so, actually. I wouldn't say in the UK.
Maybe across the world,
I think you're looking more at like, for example, like the Caribbean islands, things like that. Places where young people have been able to look up to Hamilton as one of their own, if you will, and sort of seeing, a black man can do this.
I suppose. And that's been...
in the same way we sort of saw with Tiger Woods in golf and things like that.
He's defied the odds so much as Hamilton throughout his career. So
exactly. And I think a lot of people forget as well. I think Hamilton knows that deep down. It's what's driven him to get to this point. He knows he's lucky to be where he is, and he never will forget that.
And I like how, I used to not like Hamilton at all. I respect him completely now, and like how humble he's becoming.
Yeah.
He still complains a bit, but
But again, it's because his complaints get broadcast a lot more than anyone else. Because it gets the media will coast about it because it makes them money at the end.
But
of the day.
I really like how humble, especially 2020. Like he completely kept the spotlight on what was important in the world. So fair play to him.
And I think this is the thing, isn't it? He is trying to drive positive change within Formula 1. For me, though, still, for now, Senna still ranks as the greatest of all time.
Fair. I can completely see why you agree to think that.
People will say he's only a 3-time world champion. Arguably he won all 3 world titles that he should have.
Yeah,
and got unlucky in 88. Sorry, 89 even, I should say. He took out Prost once at Suzuka, but he was probably going to win the world title anyway. Got a bit lucky because of the rules at the time with only your best certain results, I'll admit. Prost was more consistent that year and did actually score more points.
Really?
But Senna played to the rules. Prost scored more points, It was your best 12 of 16 results, I think. And Prost scored points in like 15, but Senna only scored points in like 13 of them, I want to say. But obviously he had more wins, But, so for me it was, obviously, for example, Schumacher has 97, Hamilton has 2016. And of like the titles that got away.
2011 he lets himself down in as well. But that wasn't really a title, that was just him being poor.
Titles that got away sort of more than anything else. Everyone has that rough year. Senna, again, was only in Formula 1 for 10 years.
That's insane to me.
Obviously, he was a bit older as well. But when you think Schumacher, by the time he'd been in Formula 1 for 10 years, had only wrapped up 3 world titles on his way to his 4th.
Yeah, that's true.
Senna would have been in the same position. It's highly likely.
Also Hamilton on his way to 4. That's crazy.
Hamilton was 4 on... No, he came in 07, didn't he? Not 08. So he would have been 3 on to 4 as well. So Senna was keeping up with them. And you'd therefore argue, obviously, Senna would have taken titles away from Schumacher.
And he would have won 94.
Senna could have... Senna would have won 94 and...
Should have won 98.
Obviously,
88.
depending on how things could have gone. Should have won 98 and could have possibly won a couple more because, let's be fair, even when he died, he was still the hottest
Damon
property
Hill,
in Formula 1.
96. Senna arguably could have had that as well.
Would have been Senna's if he'd stayed at Williams, isn't it? But we both know Senna could have gone anywhere that had the fastest car. He could have probably gone to Benetton for 95 if he wanted.
Probably. But
which
you can
is
do
ridiculous.
this with a lot of drivers, to be fair. You can argue Schumacher almost won 11 and stuff like that. It's stupid. But
exactly, yeah, and that's obviously you can say this, that, and the other, can't you, for
Yeah.
all of them? But there we go, our top 10, and we've kept it pretty low key. And
I tried to put Max
at the
Verstappen
end
in,
of the
but
day.
not
Then
quite. He's definitely the best driver without a title.
I think he's got the potential to be.
He's already 17th. It's
best
crazy.
of all.
He's 23, which is the age most drivers
Yeah.
debut in history.
He's for Verstappen. He's either going to go one or two ways for me. He's either going to be an Alonso, which is a how many more should he have won, or he's going to be your Schumacher early 2000s, just complete domination.
It really depends on what car he ends up in, unfortunately.
Once Hamilton's gone, yeah. If Red Bull can give him a car,
or if he moves to Mercedes,
no way
which he might.
Verstappen. Possibly, if Mercedes stick around for a lot longer.
We'll see.
But yeah, we certainly will. That'll be a podcast. That'll be episode 384 of the podcast. Mercedes announced they're leaving Formula One in a few years' time. But there we go then. The Schumacher movie to round out. Definitely worth a watch.
Yeah,
I think we can
definitely.
both agree. But if you're a die-hard Formula One fan, which I'd imagine anyone watching this podcast is, you might be left feeling slightly disappointed.
Yeah.
By some aspects, but certainly worth a watch.
Like
at
up to
the end of
2000,
the day.
it was very, very good. I thought, but then leaves a little bit of a sour taste. I don't know.
There was Schumacher 2 needs to come out.
Yeah.
Schumacher 2, the Schumachering. But yeah, obviously Russian Grand Prix this weekend, so we'll be back with a bit more of a normal podcast obviously next week out as well. Obviously we already made our predictions for the Russian Grand Prix last week, but I think you said, well, weirdly enough, you went Bottas Hamilton first of all, didn't you?
I did.
Until I reminded you there's no way they're going to let him win. So you went Bottas Verstappen Hamilton,
engine
was
pen
it?
to Hamilton Verstappen. Bottas wins.
And I went Hamilton Bottas Verstappen.
Yeah, boring.
Because obviously Verstappen's got his penalties and Bottas is good at Russia.
Yeah.
But yeah, let us know obviously if you did enjoy sort of this slightly different style podcast. We've got so many sort of like obscure ideas for podcasts we want to do down the line as well. Obviously that we'll definitely discuss more about that in the future. Of course, yeah, a lot to discuss obviously next week when we get back to sort of like the normal stuff. Maybe by then we'll have an Alfa Romeo announcement as well. I think it's looking highly likely, isn't it? About Guan Yu Zhou as well. Well, one of us does. One of us thinks he's basically going to be the new Lance Stroll, and I think it's ridiculous that people can complain about the Mazepin and Latifi getting a seat. Obviously, Mazepin is deserved of a lot of his hate for everything else going on, but Guan Yu Zhou is in their group of paid drivers.
You're a mug.
But no, I'm not. Anything else to add, Jamie, before we finish off that doesn't involve calling me a mug?
I think that's everything.
No. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Let us know if you've already watched the Schumacher movie down in the comments below what your thoughts and feelings on were on it as well. And yeah, we'll be back very, very soon with more F1 2021 conversations.